Just press escape. Hi. You guys having a good time? Everybody enjoying themselves? Good, because I'm terrified, so at least one of you's having a good time. So I have to admit, I wrote some notes. I know I'm not supposed to, but this is for your benefit, because otherwise I'm just going to ramble incoherently for 15 minutes. When Richard and Moses asked me to speak at TED, I was a little shocked and surprised and a little bit embarrassed because I didn't know what TED was. I've spent my life in a very insular little bubble, and I did some research on the conference, and I was really honored to have been asked to speak here, and then really excited about the potential of being able to talk about whatever I wanted, and then terrified because I realized that the way that my imagination works, if I don't have any constraints placed on what I have to talk about, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to come up with something. So that was 10 months ago, and for 10 months I've worried about it, and I rewrote my presentation last night at 3 in the morning for the 38th time. So you're going to have to bear with me because it's a little rough. What am I supposed to be doing here? I always try and tell myself that technology is a labor-saving device. That's going to take a while. Anyway, basically, I'm Alex. I'm 25 years old, and I make video games. That's what I do. And I have a company in Vancouver called Relic Entertainment, and started about 3 years ago, and yada, yada, yada. But I don't want to talk about that. Basically, when I was very young, I came from a pretty dysfunctional family when I was very young. I came from a pretty dysfunctional family. I wasn't close to my parents. It was somewhat abusive. We moved around a lot. And the way that my mind worked, which I understand a little bit now, but not back then, was that there was so much going on all the time that I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't express myself because the words wouldn't come out. It just sounded like incoherent gibberish. And they thought I was handicapped. They thought I was special needs. And they put me in these classes where I'd sit there with a bunch of people drooling, and we'd look at flashcards, and it was really very quaint, but I wasn't happy with it. And fortunately for me, I found computers. And the first computer I found was a Commodore 64. And actually, it was a TI-128, but that's not really a computer. It's like a glorified calculator. But the first computer was a Commodore 64. And what happened is I found a friend for the first time in my life. And it was a friend that no matter where I lived, it was going to be there because they travel. And it was a friend that was never going to judge me. And it was a friend that could keep up with me. And what happened was this really magical thing. My imagination was unlocked, and my ability to communicate was unlocked, and I became a person. And I really think of myself as being born really roughly around 10 years old. So for the next few years, I poured myself into these machines, and I grew up really not understanding where the line was between me and the machine. It was very blurred. It always has been very blurred. And over the years, I've learned to slow down parts of my thought process so that I can articulate what I'm thinking. And if you ever have the unfortunate pleasure of being around me when I'm not doing that, it's gibberish again, and you'll think I'm insane. So. I don't need PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint. I need this, but I don't know if I'll be able to open. Don't worry. They said not to script it, so perfect. That if you can flip that over, that would be good. I don't know if this is going to work. I wrote this on the airplane on the way here, so that's supposed to be black. That's good. It's working. Okay, so. I felt like it was my mission in life to help other people find this same revelation, this same vision, the same beauty, the same petal, this flower of your imagination opening up. And I found an outlet for that in games. I remember when I was about 11 years old, it was at Christmas, and I got a Christmas present, and it was the only Christmas present I ever got that meant anything to me. And I didn't expect it. It was a total surprise. And I have a photograph of me opening this present, and it's the only one from my childhood that I really cherish. And it was a Nintendo. It was an 8-bit Nintendo system. And I lost my mind. I was so excited. And I think my father bought it because I had stolen so much money from him to go play video games at the arcade that he figured it was actually an economical purchase for him. So I got this Nintendo. I became totally addicted to it. I actually got a paper route so that I could go and afford to buy games. And I would get on the bus once every 2 weeks with my paper route money. I'd go downtown in Winnipeg in the winter, in this miserable winter, and go to this one store that sold Nintendo games. That was it. And there was a whole wall of these 8-bit Nintendo games. And I remembered that each game was like a window into this fantastic universe that could never possibly have existed anywhere. And I could take it home with me, and I could go to that world, and I could live in that world. And when I'm playing games, there is no other world. I am part of what's happening. And that type of escape really is what has helped me get here and not lose my mind. So I decided that I was going to work with computers in some way. I knew I was going to have to. And when I was, by the way, it's all about me, just in case you haven't figured that out yet. When I was 15 years old, I got that from Richard. When I was 15 years old, I was working in a yogurt store one night, and I was very self-important. I had a tie on, and I hated my job. Oh my God! But it gave me money to buy video games. It gave me money to buy computers, buy modems, etc., which I used to pirate more video games. And this black Lamborghini Diablo pulled up out front, and I was fascinated with this car because to me, the money signified the ability to get limited access to the things that I needed to be happy. So I quit. I walked out. I walked up to the car, and I waited for the door to open, and this guy was talking on this humongous cell phone, and the door opened, and I stood there, and he said, yes, and I said, I'd like to work for you. And he said, you don't even know what I do. And I said, I don't care. I mean, you could sell crack for all I care. I want to work for you. And he said, okay, well, my name's Don Matrick, and I run this company called Distinctive Software, and yada, yada, yada. And I said, you hire summer students? He said, no. I said, okay, got his name, went home, made a fake resume, sent it to him, got me a summer job testing video games. That's when I found out that games was the specific things with computers that I would do. Now, for 10 years, my life has been solely devoted to that one purpose. I worked every day. I very rarely go on vacation, but you know what? I don't feel like I need to very much because I love what I do. I have such a rare pleasure. I let my imagination run completely wild, and this little petal of this idea opens up in my mind, and I'm fortunate enough to be in an environment now with my own company where I can take those ideas and bring them to a group of 20 to 30 people or 100 people and have people bet millions of dollars on them and spend years developing them. And I can take these ideas and I can send them out to people, and this idea goes from being sort of a tree, and it grows and it turns into a whole forest, and this metaphor of this idea growing, this community building up around this idea, which started in my head, for me is fantastic, because what happens when I do that is that people go through that same experience that I did when I realized that I was actually not insane and that I could live in this world, and that part of my imagination was unlocked. I have the rare pleasure of giving that back to people. Our last game that we did was really successful. I get mail all the time. I get mail from weirdos in prison who say things to me like, man, I'm in prison and it sucks. And when I get out, I'm going to move in with my mother and I'm going to get a dog and all this stuff. But the reason I'm writing to you is that, your game, dude, it just changed my whole life. I see things totally differently now. I mean, whoa, space, dude, I want to meet you. So maybe there's a downside, I don't know. But I guess the point is I am becoming frustrated again, because as I learn more about my mind and more about how I think, and as more ideas pop up, and I realize that video games aren't enough. They take so long. It's 2 years of my life to make one of these things. And once I let go of it, that's it, it's gone. So I've been thinking about ways that I can invent new forms of communication, new ways of expressing myself, ways that don't rely on the English language, ways that aren't tied to how quickly I can synthesize and speak my thoughts. And I found it really interesting today when I was sitting here at this conference. I was terrified that my idea would just be totally bogus and no one would be interested. But fortunately for me, the first 3 people who come up spoke about communication, and I felt validated, and I had the courage to stick around. I didn't run. And I thought about it. So I've been thinking a lot about, how do people communicate and why do people communicate? And in fact, the idea came to me when I was seeing my shrink, and I'm sure you're all shocked to know that I do that. Whoa. He says something to me, and tell me about your mother, how was your day? And I get these these pictures or sounds or flashes or images or trains of thought that go through my mind, and I can never get them out in time. I can never hold on to them long enough to help him understand what that is and move forward, hopefully. And I'm sure he's just as frustrated with me as I am with him. But the point is, I got this idea for this language, and at the time I called it Vibe. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if you could just take the contents of your mind. All my life I've wished for this. Wouldn't it be great if you could hook yourself up to some sort of projector and people could see what was going on in your head, because then they would know that you're not faking it or lying to them or making stuff up. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could come up with this language? And I've known for years that there had to be a way to do it, and I got this epiphany when I was sitting with my shrink and I was frustrated and it wasn't going anywhere, and thank God there was only 15 minutes left in the session, and I just gave him some BS about my dog or something. And I went home and I started thinking, I started brainstorming, and I know when I have one of these epiphanies that it's a really good idea. It may not be commercially viable, but it's a good idea. So it started me thinking, and the language is called Vibe, and Vibe is built totally on pictures and sounds and really anything that evokes an emotional response in the speaker. And that's nothing new. I mean, the Voyager space probe has a whole pictogram on the outside of it that's supposed to help aliens understand human beings. We're all shaped like this, and we're solid gold outlines. But why gold? It's like they want to impress them or something. Look, they put it on cubic zirconia on paper. So anyway, what I realized is that the internet is this repository of information. And if someone could create tools that would allow people to tap into the internet and to pull out the things that were tied to their emotions real time, we would have the most powerful form of communication which has ever existed. And then I had this huge revelation. Every morning when I wake up, I just got a TV a few months ago for the first time, and I have 900 channels. I only watch one of them, but I have 900. And every morning I wake, what's that? Huh? Sorry? Oh, see, I'm hearing things. When it sounded like you're really funny. Thank you. So, when I wake up, I watch the news, and they go through the financial news and the world news, and I've been watching something very closely. I've been watching the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and I've been thinking to myself, why isn't it working? Well, why can't they reach an agreement? It's been 8 years. 8 years that they've been going back and forth over terms, and my belief, and this is very naive because I live in a bubble, is that the problem is that we don't truly understand each other. And it's not that we can't communicate, it's that we don't understand each other. And when you don't understand something, you fear it. And when you fear it, it feeds back on itself, and it builds this cycle, this tension, and it just gets worse. And it takes a very special person, a person who's very big and very strong, to get around that. So I went back to Vibe, and I thought, how can I modify this? And what's its purpose? I know I can, some basic communication, what's its purpose? So the purpose of Vibe is to allow 2 or 3 or 100 or 1,000 people, total strangers who are different genders and races and nationalities and generations, to communicate with each other in a way that isn't designed to communicate empirical data like how many eggs are in a basket, but how do you feel? And I don't know if any of you have had a chance to do a lot of traveling, but if you go to like mainland China, or you go to Russia, or you go to even somewhere fairly socially close like England or the southern United States, or you find that people don't really understand each other. Subtle differences really stand out in your mind. And when you're alone in an environment like that, you feel really afraid. The first time I went to France, I speak French, but the first time I went to France, I was terrified because I was all alone in France, and what if something happened? And it's just a city, you get used to Paris pretty quickly, but at first I was really terrified. So I started to think, okay, video games, too cumbersome in terms of communication. There's a major global problem in terms of global understanding. It's holding us back in terms of our cultural evolution. And then it occurred to me, I realized what the internet is. And I've been thinking about this like crazy. What is the internet? What is it that compels us to create this thing? It's constantly growing. Every day it gets bigger. Every day it gets more intense. Every time I look around, there's more content on the internet. Little old ladies in Tulsa are making web pages about their kids. Why on earth are they doing that? What's the benefit to them? Their friends all know their kids. Who are they trying to tell? And this is a totally crazy hypothesis I'll throw out. I believe that the internet is a subconscious response of humanity to the growing tension that we feel because of our inability to communicate to each other. The same way that when I was a kid, I was totally frustrated and I was freaking out in my own mind because I couldn't get myself out. I couldn't be understood. I believe that as human beings become more aware of our own consciousness, as our world gets smaller, it's tied more closely together by communication, we're feeling the same tension building in us, and that the internet is our release mechanism. It's our way of getting our message out to people. And essentially, if you look at it, it's a message told through thoughts and feelings and emotions. And then I came back to Vibe, and I said, okay, well, how does this work? So I wrote this in the plane on the way over here, and it's really basic, and I don't remember the key map exactly, and yada, yada, yada. So you have to make some excuses. But basically, if my laptop isn't going to, there we go. Okay, so basically, hello? Is it, well, it's working for me. Is there some reason why that's not up there? It's showing up on all the other monitors. Hello? I'm fascinated. It's fantastic. You wouldn't believe what it looks like. I'm fine. It's fine over there. Oh, okay. Great. So basically what happens is, what I did is I downloaded a list of emotions off the internet. I said, give me 50 emotions. And then I went out and I went onto Alta Vista and I typed in just the name of the emotion. This is an experiment. I said, type in adoration. And would you believe, about 300 images that were associated with adoration came up right away. And this is the one that, to me, most directly signified adoration. This is a father looking at his son. I said, let's look at anticipation. This one really stuck with me for some reason. I don't know why. Compassion. And I think it's a good double for happiness, too. Mother Teresa, she's a cool chick. Eagerness. For me, when I was a kid, this signified me in school. Everyone else is bored out of their mind. I'm standing with my arm up, kind of frustrated. Exaltation. It's pretty clear. Anyway, the point is, I came up with the images which to me most directly signified, particular emotions. This guy in particular, and her. And anyway, what I was trying to come up with is I was trying to come up with a way of expressing basic emotions quickly, and this is difficult for me to demonstrate here because I didn't bring my flashcards, but I have some flashcards of this that I use at home. And I'll often get together with a group of friends, and we'll pick out of a couple hundred flashcards, we'll pick the ones that we think most directly signify something for a conversation about, say, sex or your girlfriend or whatever, something that's fairly visceral that you can connect with quickly. And we'll flash cards back at each other, and this most amazing thing happens. You start to build a really deep-rooted understanding of the person you're talking to. Maybe not what you're talking about, but you begin to understand the person you're talking to. Because when I show you a picture of, say, a father and a son, I might respond with a picture of a guy who's really angry. And you might think, well, what the hell is that? Why are you angry about that? Not only do you get a direct response in terms of the image that people show you, but the type of image itself gives you an impression of how the person feels about that thing. And I'm not done yet. And so basically, I know I have to wrap this up. So this is what I'm trying to get across. For me, this is a great venue for me to express this idea. You're all pretty smart people. What I think we need is tools to help people access this information quickly. Imagine if Alta Vista was keyed directly to emotions and thoughts and feelings, and you could just type in a word and it brought up a whole bunch of images away. Imagine if we had a powerful tool for communication that was built on the hopes and dreams of emotions of people in the world right now. My belief is that will be, or some form of that will be, the evolution of communication for humanity, and that's our best chance for peace and for understanding and for success and for really a global community. Until we have the ability to communicate with each other on that level, there is no hope for us. So basically, that's what I wanted to talk about today, and thank you very much.